You are listening to the Husker Performance Podcast, presented by Midwest Dairy and your local farm families. Here is your host, Jessica Coody.
Welcome into the Husker Performance Podcast, presented by Midwest Dairy. Your local farm families want to help you reset yourself with dairy, and this season we will discuss a variety of topics to help you do this. And today, excited to launch this thing with two very special guests. We've got someone you're very familiar with, the Director of Performance Nutrition, Dave Ellis, and then the Head Football Strength and Conditioning Coach, Zach Duval. And it's a busy time for you guys. You're about to wrap up summer, so I guess how's the summer going for both of you? Who's up first?
We're both feeling it.
Uh-huh.
We got about a week left, and about the time we heal up from it, it'll be time for camp, which is yet another beatdown.
What about for you, Zach, because this is such an important time for a football team and setting your team up for a season. How have you liked the way that this team has approached this summer?
Yeah, it's been really good. We have a lot of new additions onto the team, both coaching-wise and player-wise, and a bunch of portal guys and transfers, and they've kind of melded together pretty well. So we have some really good leadership that has kind of taken the reins and, driven this thing home. So
I think that's a lot of questions that we get a lot is who's emerging into that leadership role, that being that so many leaders left last season. Who have you seen kind of emerge as some of the leaders in that weight room?
Yeah, for sure it's Garrett Nelson, Travis Vokalek, Ty Robinson. So those would be the main guys that were, have history here. And then, Casey has come in and, kind of worked through the transferring issue, joining a new team and, figuring everyone out and, the structure of who is and how they are. And he's done a great job there as well. So
I would add O'Shawn Mathis.
Yeah.
Yep.
He's a quiet, but boy, is he serious.
Yep.
What's the vibe been like? Because you see them a lot on the training table, and I know you guys have had workouts on the field with coaches and stuff too this summer, but when they come in the training table, what's the vibe been like with this team?
They're hanging out together. They're buddies. And that's an evolution from what we started with here 4 years ago, that they're tighter. They've all paid a heavy price along the way. There's a lot of bonds built. And I feel good that they'll have each other's backs, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely a tight group. A team grows through suffering together. So we get to add the suffer and they get to endure, and that's where bonds are formed. So they've done a great job of attacking everything that we put ahead of them with great attitudes, good work ethic. So that's a necessity around here, that you don't get a pat on the back for that. That's just doing your job. But they've done it with a lot of intensity, which is really good to see. Anything we throw at them, they just attack it. And it's the amount of stuff that they're required to do, and the optional stuff they can do, and the meetings and the film, it adds up, and you could see a less mature team kind of checking out of that. But they've done a great job with the Unity Council and holding guys accountable and adding some walk to the talk.
I know you guys work closely together when you attack a summer plan. So once spring ball ends and then these guys come back for the summer, how do you go about developing a game plan for an entire football team? Because I know it's tailored to everybody differently. So how do you guys work together in developing, hey, this is what we need to do for this guy and that guy? What does that process look like for you guys? Dave, you can start.
Kind of like when we're in recruiting, when we're sizing a prospective athlete up and looking at their frames and if they're maturing for the larger, and whether their muscle and fat mass are tracking in the right direction. Zach and the staff on the strength side will get an update on all that, and then can pull together some individualized priorities for the athlete based on their goals. And I think these guys go to school on what happened a year ago. right? And what could be improved. That's the way sports works, right? Not make the same mistakes you made the year before, and you don't always see them coming, right? Schedule's crazy.
Yeah. For me, it starts, during spring ball. So I'll actually sit through all the meetings, the film reviews with the groups, and sit through the meetings with the coaches, and kind of take note on what they're seeing, who needs to be improved in what area, and then taking that information along with the body comps and all that stuff. Who needs to get faster? Okay, how do we get them faster? Is this a weight issue? Is it a muscle issue? Is it a conditioning issue? This guy needs to be able to change direction faster, So you can get a lot of information from listening to the coaches talk and correct the players. So we spend a lot of time in the meeting rooms, and from that we get a pretty good blueprint of what we need to do the next phase. So Dave and I'll sit down, and Dave will attack it from the nutrition side, fueling and recovery, and then body comp. So that's huge for me is what Dave does initially with the athletes. It gives me a year-by-year blueprint of what I can build, and then you test it during spring ball to see if what you built held up, if it, corners on rails the way you want it to, if it decelerates the way you need it to, if it needs to fire off quicker. And then we can go back to the drawing board after we see how it worked and tweak it and get into the next phase. So we're actually finishing up the summer conditioning, which is 8 weeks of a lot of work. So, and then the process starts again. So.
Yeah, and if somebody doesn't progress, that's the other part of the thing, is to untangle what the rate limiting issues were. If it's not explainable with injury or illness, then there may be something else going on, and we're probably going to be the first ones to know.
Yeah.
You guys both are known in your fields to be on the cutting edge of new and working with the technology and all of that. And so I guess, how has that evolved for you, and how important is that, what his technology does for what you do, and staying on the forefront of that for Nebraska?
Yeah. So I learned under the best of the best, Boyd Epley and Mike Arthur. And when I came in, my first day, Dave was already here. I won't tell the story. But there's a lot of people that cycle through, and some stick it out, others don't. So early I learned how important Dave's role was. And for me, it really made sense. My job is to tear them down. In a really finite matter, my job is to make them bleed. Dave's job is to build them back up, right? Now, there's some other things that do that, but the fuel is very important. So if, we compare the wide receivers, the DBs, to like a Ferrari or a Bugatti, if you want to race that thing the way it should, you better have the right fuel. So Dave does a great job with that. And that I learned that pretty early. I had one stop after I left the university where flew Dave out. Dave did all the nutritional work and the frame measurements and stuff for us. And Dave was pretty instrumental in finding a guy that they recruited at a smaller position. And Dave said, yeah, this is not that. This is someone who can put on 70 pounds more muscle and be faster and more powerful. So we took that information to the coaches, and Khalil Mack came out of that. A guy starting at 215 and ended at 270. His body fat was 15% down to 7, and his vert went from 33.5 to 42. So this is just a good example of, relying on the relationships you see and bringing them out wherever you were. Now, we both ended up back where we started, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. But what Dave does is there's no second place to what he does. So seeing that and seeing the results from that year after year, that's pretty important, you know. So we've added a couple other things, you know, some trade craft there that the NAPL does a great job of helping us with, you know, measuring what is the work that they're doing. Let's quantify the work that they're doing. Okay, so now we know exactly what you did. What we don't know, and what we've kind of worked through, and is what was the cost of business for the work you did, and that's what really matters. And it's both immediate and, you know, 3 days later. You know, so the information that we're collecting in the NAPL is really helping us with that, and different facets of the human body is really awesome, and it allows us to maximize the player's potential and make the play when they need to. So pretty cool.
That's
And
awesome.
I would tell you, we're going to do DEXAs next week to see how the summer data came out. It's going to be great. I can tell from weighing the athletes all summer and seeing how they're progressing. We're going to finish up recovered, just about the right amount of time to go into camp fresh and ready to go.
When you decided to come back here, how important was it that you already had a relationship with Zach and you guys went so far back and you knew that that working relationship would work?
Well, that's the reason I came back. I mean, at the end of the day, I was flying in to start doing some consulting like we had always done, wherever Zach had been. And, you know, it was still home to me in my heart. And I've talked to you about the IOUs that I have for this program that we all do for the success that we had under Coach Osborne. And so, you know, when they talked to me about an opportunity, even though it wasn't top of mind when I came in, it wasn't a tough decision, you know, to be able to work with somebody where the ramp-up energy was zero, right? It was like we had been working everywhere Zach had been.
Zach, for you, how did you get into, I know your dad was a football coach, but how did you get into the strength and conditioning side of it? What drew you to that part of football?
Yeah, so I can remember the day all the rest of the coaches' kids were up on the coaching floor, and I was really young, and I wandered down and I saw the weight room and these big, huge creatures throwing around a lot of weight, you know, muscle everywhere, and I knew right there and then that's what I wanted to do, you know. So Boyd pulled me in, gave me a workout book. I was too young for any of it at that point, but gave me a workout book and a weightlifting belt, and that's I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Went to my high school counselor, said this is the degree I need, so I don't need to take these classes, I need to take these classes. Went to the university here, took all those classes and worked you know, with Boyd and Dave, and it's all I've ever done.
Wow.
But never been to work, don't know what work is. You know, I get to hang out with these young kids and stay up to date on hip-hop culture and the latest fads here and there. It's the best.
Abbreviations.
Yeah, there you go.
Abbreviations.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best in the world because of the athletes.
Right.
It's not a job. So.
Just in my year that I've been here, a lot of recruits will come through here, and a lot of them bring you guys' name both up when they talk about their decision to want to come here, you know, meeting with Dave and what Dave can do in the nutrition side of it and what Zach can do in the weight room. So can you talk to me a little bit about your approach to when a recruit comes in here and what your sell is to them and how you guys have been able to appeal to them and be a big factor to their decision to come here?
Yeah.
Dave?
Well, it works out pretty well. You know, in the perfect world, I get a shot at him first so I can then pass along some key learnings to Zach on what I discover on the evaluation process with the athlete, typically on their frame, an estimation on their body composition. And, you know, along the way, the athlete and the family will make disclosures to us that, you know, on food preferences, allergy issues, injury history, you name it, that then Zach and I can both go to school on, and medicine can go to school on helping design something that's really going to help these athletes to where maybe they didn't see it that holistically everywhere else they went.
Yeah, it's quite the deal, and the feedback kind of verifies that. I would expect it to, because it's really thorough, and that's kind of how we've always done it, attacking it from a high performance, collaboration viewpoint, so for me to give accurate information and not guess, I don't like guessing. I need what Dave has with the athlete, so he gives me the blueprint, and then I can talk from an educated standpoint of, this is exactly what we're going to do with you. I'm not going to guess on this. Now, there are some things that we don't know yet that will, indicate how many days a week you can train or how much recovery you need. So we don't have that yet. We get that when they get here. But Dave gives me something to expand upon and build on. So without that, it's just a dog and a pony show. Mm-hmm. With what Dave does, it's exactly what's going to happen, and it's really awesome to see not only the athlete but the parents. Mm-hmm. They can sniff out things that probably don't seem right pretty quickly, and they see a pretty organized deal here.
It probably speaks volumes that you guys take the time to be able to give, hey, and it's not just a blanket overall, this is what we can do for you. Mm-hmm. For every given recruit, but you can tailor it and specialize it to each individual guy. Is that kind of what you guys are saying, that you can mm-hmm. kind of tell this potential recruit, hey, this is what we can do for you specifically, not just anybody that walks through this door?
For sure, it's authentic. Mm-hmm. They don't see it everywhere else. It sticks out probably at the end of the day when they're evaluating all their stops, that this is a safe destination where the welfare of the young athlete is going to be managed in a very specific manner, unique to their needs. And that's great. I think at the end of the recruiting process, their minds are all spinning with what they saw and where they saw it. And so you got to have a good enough, authentic enough approach to where it does stick out and they remember it.
Late night studying, intense practice, cramming for that big test? Take a moment to reset yourself with dairy. Dairy foods like milk and yogurt allow you to stay in the game with immunity-boosting nutrients like vitamin A, vitamin D, zinc, and protein to keep you fueled without the crash. Trusted by athletes and supported by science. So another thing, too, that I know we've talked about, Dave, but for you, Zach, I've seen a lot of talk about it's important for you to build relationships with these guys. How do you balance that? Because you do kind of have to be the hard butt in the weight room and get on them and push them and break them down a little bit, but then also balance building that relationship where they do trust you in that way. How does that process work for you?
Yeah. I've always subscribed to the honey, not smoke. So you can get a lot more from them by developing a good relationship. Times have changed a little bit. People have changed. So, you look at the 90s and kind of what that was and who those athletes were and who we have today. It looks a little different. So investing my life into the player's life is very important. So if you put that much time, into the players, the athletes, the recruits' lives, and the parents' lives coming in, saying, I'm not over you, I'm shoulder to shoulder with you in the trenches. So I'm going to get you to do things that you would have never contemplated, and there will be days where you wonder if you made the right decision, but the relationship will win out every time. You're going to know, not by my talk, but by my action, that you can do what I'm asking you to do, you know, and I think that's always the way to approach people. You know, talk is cheap. A lot of people talk, right? It's actions that matter, you know, and then the other thing that we hit, you know, right away is, you know, my job is to love and respect you, and I'm going to do that right from the get-go. You know, there's no buy-in with me. You automatically get my respect and my love. That being said, the unlovely part of love to some people is the accountability. So if I really love you, if I'm really, you know, investing my life in yours, I'm not going to let you do the wrong thing. You know, so there will be accountability, not for my interest, but for your interest. And you can just see them light up. You know, I don't know any young people that don't want accountability. I haven't run into it. From my kids myself to everyone I've worked with in the last 23 years. So it's a really good deal, and it pays off, and it really pays off 20 years later when, you know, you get an invite to a wedding or, you know, that's when they really understand, you know, but those relationships are for life, and it's quite the opportunity for us.
And I know it's important for what you do too. How do you go about figuring out, okay, which guys I can push a little bit and which guys I gotta maybe put the shoulder around, because I know you have to say after some of them, hey, you've got to eat today, or hey, this is what we got to do. So how do you go about developing your relationships, Dave?
Well, you know, I think we're all, when they get here, there's a process the first year to figure out who they are and what their threshold is for accountability. Not everybody's got that same threshold the day they walk in the door. And it's a accrual of, over time, being able to handle more work and more accountability that ultimately yields the product on the field that we're after and ultimately manifests leaders. And so, you know, there are some that just take longer. You know, they come by it honest and they didn't have it growing up. And then there's the kid that grew up with a lot of structure, maybe working on a farm or something, and a long, hard day, and accountability is just part of the deal, right? And it's 6-7 day a week grind out there. So we have kids that we have to sort all that out, right? And you can't push everybody through the same funnel. And you have to be able to work with those individuals. But I will tell you what's common to everybody is that when they know you're working shoulder to shoulder with them for their welfare of what it is that they're after, performance on and off the field, then no matter how much they don't like accountability, they do come around. They do start to warm up and realize you really got my best interest at heart. Thanks for the kick in the shins when I needed it, right? Yeah.
So, and on that note, I also, Mike Dawson had a quote talking about you, about how you implement some of the technique that the coaches do into the weight room. And I know you've talked about working with the coaches and finding out what players need too. Can you take us through that and how you implement that in the weight room too?
Yeah, so that's probably one of the best parts of sitting through coaches' meetings. So you can glean so much from just listening to the coach, their technique, which usually corresponds with proper biomechanics in lifting and playing football. So, you know, the way Mike does it is he looks at what we're doing in the weight room, and that's the verbiage. So if the strength coach and the coach don't have the same language, you got some breakdown there. So I've worked with Mike before via the D-line. He's been at some other positions, but it's great. It's like speaking the same language, and you know, his technique is our lingo in the weight room. So yes, we're lifting weights. I know everyone thinks we only lift heavy every day, which is incorrect. That was a comment I got the other day. But it's always driven around what does the position coach need from the athlete? What are they looking for? And then we can build that, you know. So being on the same page, speaking the same language, that's important. So instant transfer there. It's just like me working with Dave and having same history with Coach Dawson.
So you didn't have that history with Coach Raiola. You're getting to know him now. So what's that been like, and what he wants out of his offensive linemen?
So I would disagree. I think it's the same.
Okay.
He's a true O-lineman. He comes from a big-time O-line family.
Yeah.
So we speak the same language.
Speak the same language.
I'm really fired up about him. What he brings to the table, the intensity, the accountability, and the transferring or the understanding of the weight room to playing O-line. So it's really good, and I'm looking forward to it.
I can tell on your face you're a little bit giddy about that.
I am. Yep.
What's it been like for you, Dave, getting to know these new coaches and working with them?
First thing I noticed was, in case of Coach Raiola, made him move as a group. They come out of the locker room into the weight room to weigh in as a group. They are all dressed the same. They're ahead of time. He just brought a little higher level of accountability, and expectations have gone up. And so, and I think they're probably they had to learn about what his expectations were, and they've all conformed, and they're drinking from the well, and they're believers, and I expect really good things here.
What about Coach Applewhite and Coach Joseph and those guys? Yeah,
well, same thing. I think anytime you get new coaches, everybody's starting over. Mm-hmm. Everybody was on equal ground, and it was a new opportunity for anybody that had struggled before. And there was no entitlement with people that had succeeded before. All these new coaches come in and create a little urgency, which is a great thing. There's nothing wrong with that, and we've seen it with every one of them.
What about Bill Bush? That guy is a character, and you guys obviously probably knew him back when he was here the first time, and he told us all kinds of crazy stories. So what's your take on him being back on the staff? And we've seen the impact he's done recruiting, and just just the energy he brings. It seems like it's really added a lot as well. You guys you're kind of laughing. Well,
we know him. We've known him forever. He was at Wisconsin when I was up there years ago, and we go back before that. So there's three sides of this game: offense, defense, special teams. You better treat every one of them like they're equally important. And Bill brings that kind of urgency to the table on special teams. I'm really excited. Yeah,
and very, very detail-oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we see that as being something that's a lot different as far as how he approaches everything he does. So I sit through those meetings, the special teams meetings, and it's a work in progress, but pretty confident in him. Great recruiter, knows how to talk to people, can relate to people. So we'll see.
We will see.
Yep.
I just got a couple more for you guys. Just outside this window here, you might be able to hear a little bit of the construction going on as you're listening to this. This facility is just really shooting up and making progress every single day. I know both your areas are a huge part of what's being implemented. So, Zach, first of all, for you, and that was a big need for this program, is to have more space. How excited are you about this thing getting closer and closer to being done?
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm fired up. It's kind of my last great Magnus opus. I don't know. No, I'm really excited. And it's kind of the Nebraska way. We really pride ourselves on the walk-ons, and you need more space to be able to do that. 2 years ago, 8 walk-ons are in scholarships and they're playing, and that is Nebraska tough. We see that every day. The commitment that both Coach Frost and Trev have to preserving that and rewarding that and driving that history of Nebraska, that's really important. But that drives a larger space. So that we're pretty fired up about. There's times throughout the year where we need massive amounts of space in short periods of time. You lack time. So this new weight room will allow us to do that. It will allow us to put all of the performance heads under the same roof, which, Dave's office is right next to mine, and that makes sense. So we're adding a couple other people in the same room because that's where everything happens. So the NAPL will be very instrumental in that. Sports psych and med, it'll be great. But there's a lot of stuff that we're putting into this new weight room that's specific to what Boyd Epley started a long time ago. So there's been a lot of beta versions of both software and hardware, and ramping all that up and taking the vision, that he kind of developed both of us under, and bringing it to fruition. So this it'll have all the bells and whistles, and not only tearing them down, but building them up, and making it home.
So you didn't have to do a bunch of research, and you kind of already had a plan of what you felt like this program needed in a weight room.
Yeah. So it's kind of be my third weight room design. Worked in Colorado for a while, so got to spend a lot of time at the training center there and what they were doing. Wyoming came with its own hurdles and high altitude, so we created a high altitude training facility there where we could actually bring them down to sea level while they trained. So did a lot of work there, and then UCF, same thing. And now here, and it's been a labor of love, and we're excited to see it through. And Dave's been with me every step of every design, which is really awesome. So there's, like you said, there's no ramp up. It's just, this is what it is. Let's go.
And Dave, for those that might not have heard when we've talked about it before, can you take us through what was important to you when you were designing the training table? And I know more space is key, but what you were looking for when you were designing the new training table in this facility?
Well, we short on seating. We've cobbled some things into place in the current training table that weren't there by design. So we're really fixing just functionally a lot of the stuff that we've evolved into the current space that is functioning, but you can tell we cobbled it in. And so that'll all be there by design, with plenty of space. And time is an issue even for feeding. We need to expedite the food as quickly as possible, and yet give them creative outlets to do something that doesn't make them go crazy over 3, 4, 5 years while they're around here. From a variety standpoint, this new facility will do all that. And most importantly, there will be health professionals around them when they're selecting their food, dietitians in training, which is totally unique. Like most places, people putting the food in the buffet got nothing to do with dietetics from a background. Everybody around our athletes, when they come in to select their food, knows their goals and is capable of steering them and answering a question. That's unreplicable. And we'll have more of that, of course, going into the new facility. And Zach and I will have a good year of getting everything worked out. Once we get in there, everybody in that new facility it'll take a year to settle in there, and but it will have an immediate impact on performance and recruiting, you can be sure.
Zach, you a stir fry guy, a pizza oven guy when you go to the training table?
I'm a meat and potatoes guy, medium rare. So, yeah.
I know there's going to be a lot of secrets that we can't give away, but is there one thing that you can point to that you're most excited to about the new weight room? Or is it one thing you can't tell? You can't tell us.
It'd be 5 things I'm fired up about, and 5 I can't tell. So
hey, we'll let you keep that advantage there. Just last thing, I guess, as you put the bow in summer and you head into fall camp, how do you guys both feel about where this team is at before you move into the next phase into fall camp?
I feel really really good. The players have accepted and furthered the culture of what winning looks like, what it takes to win what it takes to finish something off. That's been a big deal for us is, yes, let's attack it, a desire to excel with no fear of failure, but finish it off, So we've seen a lot of maturation, in that area as far as, strength and conditioning, very fired up about that. The players just work, heads down and work. Doesn't matter what we put in front of them. They just attack it, and that's that has a lot to do with relationships and trust, And then on the field, it's the same thing, And that was part of gaining some new coaches and what they expect, with running and the offense that's being ran and what that means for the defense and, what we have to do, via the NAPL from collecting data and coming up with this is what the game looks like. This is what practice looks like on a Tuesday to get to the game. So there's a lot that goes into it, but at the end of the day, these young men have done a great job of showing up, with their lunch pail in hand and just getting to work, not a lot of talk, just work and accountability. So, yeah.
And Dave, for your part of it, whether it be a player gain or lose or trim up, whatever it might be overall as a group, how do you feel about where this progress came or went over the summer?
Well, it's going well, and I think something that should be mentioned is that the Unity Council, the Player Leadership Council, I think is exerting a great deal of influence, which is good because when we had a lot of success, there was great leadership, of course, from the coaches and Coach Osborne. But at the end of the day, when they shut the door and they hold themselves accountable, and there are guys that are vocal enough to stand in there and play that role, that's when the thing really gets on track. And so I'm sensing a lot of that, a lot of improvement there. I've seen it on the accountability front. When we do have a problem, they seem to take care of it. And so that's a big evolution. That's a big corner to turn.
Yeah. Yeah. Increasing toughness is doing the right thing consistently. So that's really what it is, So no matter what is in front of you, being accountable to it, not only doing it, but doing it with great intensity. And, we've seen a major uptick in that, player-led, player-empowered, player-led, and that's exactly where it needs to come from. It need not be a motivational speech every day by a coach. That needs to come from the players because they're the one out on the field doing the job. So our job is to support those player leaders, give them what they need in backing, and affirm them in their roles. And we've seen that and we've done that.
Has it been surprising being that there is a mix of so many new guys and guys coming back? I mean, it seems like from what you're saying is that it's meshed well, which doesn't always happen when that is the case.
No, I was wondering myself how it was going to go. You get guys from all over the country, different year, different maturation levels, and they're thrown into an existing deal that needs to improve. I was wondering the same thing, but you got some, I would say O'Shawn is a great example. Very squared away, very mature, carries himself with a lot of confidence, a lot of pride, and he works very well with Garrett Nelson, who's been here, who's the voice and who's the action. You got O'Shawn backing him up, and it's pretty impressive. So, and I think that's a tribute to the players who have watched, probably taken some notes on, that was good. No, we need to get better in these areas. And they've increased, their expectations and their execution of those expectations.
Anything to add to that, Dave?
Well, yeah. Motivational sound bites are nothing without accountability.
Yep.
And so the fact that they're taking this into their own hands to the degree that we've witnessed is characteristic of everything that's ever worked here at the highest level. So I'm very anxious to see that carry forward through camp, into the locker room on game day, at halftime, when we're in a pinch on the sidelines late in the game. There's just a lot that the coaches can't say that comes naturally out of these athletes as leaders that in the moment will be the difference, I can promise you.
Well, Dave, Ellis, Zach Duval, appreciate your time. Fascinating conversation. I could keep asking you questions, but I know you guys got a lot on your plate, so appreciate your time. I know Husker fans will really appreciate hearing your perspective, and such an important part of what these athletes do come fall camp.
Thank you.
Go Big Red.
Love it. Love it. Thanks so much for listening to the Huskers Performance Podcast presented by Midwest Dairy. Much more headed your way, so make sure you subscribe and like wherever you listen.